everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. So it has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video, although this video is going up a little bit later than it normally would because I'm posting my October wrap up before this because it just made sense with the timing of when the videos fall. I also considered posting my TBR, which I'm going to film after this, before this as well, because now my TBR is not going to go up until like the 7th or 8th, even though I will have filmed it on like the 2nd, but it just didn't, I didn't want to have this recent reads video go up really late and then go straight into another recent reads video, even though it had only been a week in between them. I don't know if you guys care about any of this little backstory to my filming order, but like I said, it has been a week, even though you may be thinking it's been a little bit longer since, like, between postings of them. It is still only been a week in between filming them, is basically the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I read 6 books over this past week, which I'm really happy with because I was reading some chunky monkeys this week, which we'll see as we get into things. And I also didn't DNF anything this week, which I have DNF'd at least one book, I think, for like the past 4 weeks, so in a row. So I'm pretty happy to have had a DNF-free week. So let's jump straight in to the books. So the very first book that I completed was Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book, of course, in the Throne of Glass series, which is a YA fantasy series that follows a assassin. That's all I'm going to tell you. This I really enjoyed. The series has been like steadily like improving and getting better. For me, there's lots of new characters introduced in this one. We also have like kind of a lot of different storylines going on in this. I will say that this is a little bit slow. There's definitely like, this is quite a chunky book, as I mentioned. This one is 560 some pages. We do like have different parts of the story where not a lot is going on. I still really enjoyed it. It wasn't like a huge issue for me, but I thought that I would mention it. I also have definitely at this point in the series become quite invested with these characters and everything. I cried at like 2 different points towards the end of this story, and the ending of this and everything that was happening made me so pumped to move on to the next book. So I ended up rating this a 4 stars, which is pretty good. I then read Hercule Poirot's Christmas by Agatha Christie. I think this is like book 20 that I'm up to, I think, thereabouts in the Hercule Poirot series. So this one is obviously a Christmas story, and it's funny because there's like the dedication in the front like made me like real pumped for it, because it talked about how she'd got a letter from I think it was like her nephew or something like that, saying that her murders had become a little bit too the cases, sorry, had not been like bloody and like gruesome enough, and so she was like, here's a bloody gruesome crime for you, which was a lot of fun. So straight off we knew that this was going to be like a really gruesome murder, which it is. And it's of course typical Agatha Christie closed door mystery, where this one basically follows, it's Christmas time, and there's this old man who's like the head of a family who's like not a nice man, and he has basically like kind of in a way manipulated all of his like adult children and like their partners and then a few like other people to all be in the house together at Christmas time. And then the old man is found brutally murdered in a very bloody gruesome crime scene, and it's all about which one of them did it, because it has to be one of them. And also the kind of kicker with this crime is that everyone heard the murder because it was really like loud, and there was this huge like scream of agony. They heard the scuffle and they all raced up straight away, but the door was locked and they had to break the door down to get in. And when they break the door to get in, he's murdered and dead, and there's no one in there, but the door was locked from the outside. So what happened, and how did the murderer get out of the room without him having to pass everyone who was... It's a whole thing. Now, I, for the first time ever, have solved in my mind the majority of this crime. I don't think I'm ever going to figure out all the details in an Agatha Christie crime because she's just too clever. But I did guess both who the murderer was and like a decent-ish portion of like what had gone on. I didn't guess like any of the motive or anything like that, but the actual like parts of what had happened and like who did it, I guess, which is a huge step because Agatha Christie mysteries are notoriously like very intricate and detailed. And yes, I think some people would consider her mysteries to be the type that you can't solve yourself. But, and like, that's kind of true, but at the same time, I do think she lays everything out there for you. You get to the end, and even though it can be quite complicated, you do get to the end and go, Hercule Poirot pointed out all the clues to you at every point. So you just have to be able to put it together in exactly the right way, which is really hard to do. So I always enjoy them. I really enjoyed this one, partly because I felt really clever, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I then read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I listened to this on audio. This is narrated by Cynthia Farrell and Deacon Lee. Now, if you just saw my October wrap-up, which went up a couple of days before this, then you'll know this will end up being my favorite book of the month. I gave this 4.5 stars. So this is an adult romance. It's very popular on BookTube at the moment. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's an adult romance that follows 2 characters, Olive and Ethan. Olive's twin sister Amy is, at the start of the book, is getting married to Ethan's brother, Dane. And they're at the wedding, and Olive and Ethan really don't get along. They really don't like each other, but they both, Olive is allergic to seafood, and Ethan like refuses to eat buffet food. So they're the only 2 who don't eat from the buffet at this wedding. And everyone comes down with this really horrendous case of food poisoning. Like, it's kind of like a diseased like type food poisoning. Like, it's going to have longer lasting effects than just like your standard kind of 24-hour, 48-hour food poisoning type of thing. And so Dane and Amy can't go on their honeymoon. And the honeymoon is a prize that Amy won in like a giveaway. So it's not like exchangeable to like different dates or different people, all of that. And so Olive and Ethan end up going on this honeymoon and have to pretend to be Amy and her husband. So they're pretending to be this married couple, but they don't like each other, and they're on this holiday in Maui, and it's just utterly delightful. I really liked, obviously, the hate to love elements. I found the romance itself to be quite like a good build up, because I always love hate to love, but sometimes you do get it to be a bit of a case where it goes straight from kind of hate to love, and there's no like progression through them kind of slowly realizing that maybe this person isn't as bad as they thought, and then slowly starting to think, oh, not only are they not as bad as I thought, but actually they're quite good and I like them, and then like falling in love. And this one had a pretty good progression for that, in my opinion. I liked all the characters. I also found most of the obstacles like to the romance, because there's always like obstacles that they come against. Most of them I felt like seemed like pretty legit. Like, quite often when you get romance books and there's some obstacle that they come against, it feels really contrived, and you just think like, you know, quite often it's a communication issue and things like that, and you're just like, just talk to each other and this would be sorted. But most of the obstacles they come across in this book like felt like legit, and even like the reasons for them not liking each other, even though like it may be misunderstandings and all of that, again, that felt legit. Like, I could see how everything could be like misconstrued and they could end up not liking each other. Like, it all felt very authentic. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was just so fun, so enjoyable, really great romance. Like I said, I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was my end up being my favorite read of October. Then we come to my next read, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 4. Yes, book 4 in the series. And this one is another chunky monkey. This one is 645 pages, I think. I really enjoyed this. So there's a character, I don't want to get too much into this obviously because of spoilers, but there's lots of different perspectives in this series, and you get more and more as the series goes on. And there's one particular like character and like storyline that I've heard. There's one main channel that I can think of, but I think I've heard other people mention it and say that they consider it really boring and they don't like that part. And it gets to the point where I think that person was saying they literally skipped this character's like chapters, which I don't even know how you would get the whole story if you did that. But I love that part of the story. That character and stuff is like one of my favorite characters in the whole series, and I really love their parts. I do think that even though this was a good, like basically 100 pages longer than Heir of Fire, I thought this one was better paced. This one felt pretty action-packed the whole time. Like, there's lots of different like action portions, and the parts like in between the action parts like weren't like overly slow. Like, we were still like moving the story along the whole time. I have been spoiled for like some elements to this series, but it hasn't really affected my enjoyment at all. This was definitely my favorite of the series so far, and I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars. So So there's that. I then listened on audio to People Like Us by Dana Malay, which is narrated on audio by Erin Spencer. So this is a YA mystery thriller. It's about a girl who's at a boarding school, and she's like very like in the popular, it's a Giles tale. She's in the popular crowd, like the popular bitchy crowd basically. And she's in that crowd, and at the start of the story, they're like going to go skinny dipping or something, and they find a body in the lake. And it's like believed to be like potentially a suicide. However, she then gets this email from the dead girl, basically leading her on this like revenge scavenger hunt, like revenge on behalf of the girl who's died, like basically her taking revenge against all of the people who wronged her, which are the main character's friends, because they're like the popular bitchy girls, which she is one. And then it's all about the mystery kind of how is she getting, like what's going on, how has this person done this when this person's died, did they commit suicide, were they murdered, blah blah blah. I didn't really like this. I did not like it. I gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't like terrible, but I just couldn't connect to this story. The main character, not likable, didn't like her. The ultimate like outcome of like the mystery, I guessed pretty early on. It seemed pretty obvious to me. And then there was like one extra like little twist like part at the end, which I didn't like. I thought was dumb. Now thinking about it, 3 stars kind of seems generous. Like it wasn't bad. Like the story was still like enjoyable enough. Like I listened to it. It wasn't ever like, ugh, this is like, maybe I should not stop reading this. Like it was fine. It just, I couldn't connect to it. I just didn't really like overly care about the mystery. The main character I didn't care about. But like she's not supposed to be likable. Like she's a bitchy, mean, popular girl. So, but I didn't think that she was particularly layered that well, in my opinion, or it just didn't come across in the right way. Anyway, I don't really have too much to say about it. Like I said, in the end, I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then the final book that I read over this past week was The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta. This is one of the e-arcs that I have from NetGalley, so I did receive a digital arc in exchange for an honest review. And this is a YA, like magical realism. It's about a main character named Danny who has just moved to California from, I think it's Minnesota. And she basically has just like picked out somewhere random on a map at random and is drawn to this place and moves there in amongst like the California redwoods. And she moves there, and when she moves to this like new school, there is this group of girls called the Greys who are all basically like this kind of witchy coven. But one of them has recently gone kind of missing, and Danny was being drawn there, and they feel like Danny's being drawn there to help them find Imogen, this missing one of their coven, and it's all kind of about that. This has great diversity. All of the witchy girls are queer in some way. One of them's black, one of them's Filipino. They come from a variety kind of different upbringings. I loved the setting. The setting in amongst, like, so much of this takes place, like, in the woods, like, amongst the California redwoods. Like, it was so atmospheric and just, like, done really well. Like, I felt like I could see the trees around me when I was reading it. Like, the atmosphere was really great. I thought the writing was pretty beautiful. It's very much, like, the story's kind of like a slow, kind of meandering story, but it's kind of supposed to be that way. It's not a story that like was slow without, like, it was slow kind of for an intention. It's kind of a very like magical flowing along with the story type of thing, and I enjoyed it. I've heard this described on a review as like a sapphic raven cycle, and yes. When I read that, I was like, yes, this had very much like Raven Boys vibes, but it's like a group of girls instead of a group of boys. And all of the characters are queer, like I said, and it was just really great. I ended up really quite enjoying it, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. That's it. That is everything I read this past week. Like I said, a pretty good reading week overall. I'm hoping to get through. So I've read 2 audiobooks for the last 2 weeks. Hopefully maybe next week I can maybe get through 3. Although no. I just remember that I've got a really long audiobook, I think, coming up in my audiobook queue. So Maybe not, but we'll see. Hopefully I can have another great reading week next week, leading into kind of the first full week of November. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've read, if you've got any thoughts, what you have been reading recently. Have you been loving it? Have you been hating it? I would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.